Chris Stamey has a new album releasing Friday, July 11th. You're hearing the title track, Anything is Possible. The musicians who contributed to this record include the Lemon Twigs, Matt Douglas of the Mountain Goats, Marshall Crenshaw, Don Dixon, Probyn Gregory, and more. And of course, it features longtime friend and collaborator Mitch Easter. Chris sings, plays keyboards, guitar, and bass, and he wrote the orchestrations. It was great to talk with Chris about his early days in Chapel Hill and Winston-Salem, his early bands that he formed with friends in school, his move to New York, working with Alex Chilton and Richard Lloyd, the formation of the dB's, and his career as a singer-songwriter, musician, record producer, and engineer. Stay tuned for a talk with the great Chris Stamey. You're listening to Frets with DJ Faye. No lessons, no technique info. I just talk to people who play guitar. Stay tuned. Chris Stamey, thanks for taking some time to talk today.
Hey, Dave, thanks for the chance.
Well, for the listeners, Chris has a new album that's going to release on July 11, and we'll talk about that and hear some of it. But before that, Chris, I know a fair amount, or at least I think I do, about your early bands and friends you met when you were in school. I'd like to go even farther back. You were born in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, right? Or at least in that area?
Correct, yeah. And if you're going to go back further than that, I can't help you.
Okay. Now, I thought it was Chapel Hill where you were born. Well, what kind of music do you remember hearing in your early years? Like, was it stuff you heard around the house or radio stations? And what did you like in those when you were really young?
I mean, those houses were, I was in Boston by the time I was 2, and then in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, again, when I was around 4. So most of my listening was in Winston, and most of it was originally just music my parents would play on the piano and the radio. We had a turntable that gave really bad electric shock, so I associated violent electrical brainwaves with music for a while. Most of it was stuff I'd hear, not really all media. I had a reel-to-reel tape recorder, a couple of different ones, so I started buying albums on reel-to-reel tape because A&M was making them that way. And a few other people. So you could buy the Beatle records on reel-to-reel tape.
Wow.
And it was a cool format.
Yeah.
But I guess it was, the Great American Songbook. And, the radio hits would be like records like Hernando's Hideaway, Iko. A lot of novelty records would go to the top, or things that sounded really different.
Huh.
But I mean, there were hits like Downtown by Petula Clark was a tune, I tuned out the British invasion pretty much. And the thing that really influenced me as I got a little bit older was the music being played by original bands in town, because in my town of Winston-Salem, the churches were worried about teenage decadence and wanted to control it. So they established coffee houses where, there was no alcohol served, of course, and bands would play, but the church didn't care if you were playing songs you wrote. Oh, wow. So there was not an expectation of playing the popular hits. So my peer group was really what I was listening to at that time.
Interesting. Yeah, when you mentioned the reel-to-reel, though, my dad had a reel-to-reel. Well, we had a great turntable, too. He was always really into, hi-fi equipment. But he had, in fact, it's sitting 4 feet away from me here. I inherited that after he passed away. But, I didn't buy albums on it, but I would record, I figured out how to record, albums off the radio stations I listened to, stuff like that. So that's kind of cool.
I think, well, you couldn't record. There weren't video recorders at that time.
Right.
But I think that Mitch Easter and I we were fans of the Man from U.N.C.L.E. television show.
Oh, yeah.
And we wanted to be able to relive those shows. So we would record them. I think we got into reel-to-reel recording in order to memorialize television.
Yeah. Well, Lalo Schifrin just passed away the other day, and I was, I've got a pretty good chunk of his stuff I've got some playlists that are either his film scores or television scores or whatever, but I loved all that stuff. My brother and I really, really liked Man from U.N.C.L.E. when we were kids. Yeah, I was sad to see that he passed away just the other day. Oh, you mentioned Mitch Easter. So in school, you met like Mitch Easter and Peter Holsapple. I lose track of the chronology. Like, were you guys in grade school, junior high, or when you first met each other?
I think I met Mitch. Was it the summer before second grade or the summer of second grade?
Wow,
one or the other.
That was very young.
So it's a long time, yeah. Yeah. And Peter, I didn't get to know until I joined he had a blues band that I think originally named Soup. And I played upright bass in that band. And he was a fan of like Peter Green from Fleetwood Mac. Everybody loved Mike Bloomfield.
That's great. And then, again, the chronology, though, at what point, was it later than that like Rittenhouse Square came to be, or was that high school?
That was high school. And
one thing I meant to ask when I was talking about your early years, was guitar the first instrument you learned to play?
No, I'm not even sure I play it worth the damn, but I played bass. Acoustic bass and electric bass. And the only reason, I played piano in my ham-fisted way because we had a piano, but I was really forced into playing guitar when I started writing and singing songs, and because it was just the practical thing to do. But I never really mastered it, I don't think. I have a spotty knowledge of it. There's some things I know pretty well about it, but I had good, Mitch Easter and Peter Holsapple were quite adroit at guitar playing. I know your program is called Fret, so I'm hoping you can include bass.
Absolutely.
I can express myself on guitar. I played cello as well, and my guitar technique is really more a compressed cello technique. I lead with my little finger a lot.
Nice. Well, you guys did a lot of covers, but yeah, you mentioned you were writing original songs back in those days. Do you remember like some of those first songs?
There's a really good example it's a song that Mitch wrote, but when we started recording in his basement. It's called "The Train Stops Here." We never released that recording. Oh, maybe we did release it sometime, but we actually played it again for a concert that we did in, was it 2018, 2017? If you go on YouTube and look for "The Train Stops Here," it's the only song called that, and there's a really good live performance of it. I edited the video, and you'll get a good idea of how crazy it was.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up.
There are also some live performances by that Rittenhouse Square band from this later time.
Oh, nice.
On YouTube, a reunion show. There's a good cover of a song that a group called the Bubble Puppy had a hit single in Winston of a song called Hot Smoke and Sassafras, which was something that Granny on Beverly Hillbillies used to say. Oh. But we do a good version of that.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just talking recently, or I mentioned even on a recent episode, that I'm realizing as time goes on, I've talked to quite a few people who just happen to be from the kind of North Carolina, that whole area up there. And I know it just seems like a lot of you guys all kind of know each other. A lot of the musicians seem to know each other. Because after high school, you attended UNC, University of North Carolina, but you also attended NYU, right?
Well, I think most all these people you mentioned migrated to Chapel Hill in the shadow of UNC, and including Don Dixon. And but after that, I moved up to New York, and then they all followed me, I think.
Oh.
I'm back in New York. I've been away too long. I'm back where the buildings touch the sky. I'm back in New York. I'm back where I belong. I'm back where the subways sing a lullaby. I want to walk the streets of a jingle jangle morning.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey, I want to talk about Plug. Plug makes it easy for you to purchase the personal technology you need at 40 to 70% off retail pricing. What can you get from Plug? Certified pre-owned devices including iPhones, Androids, AirPods, Macs, smartwatches, accessories, and more. I originally didn't even want an Apple Watch, but I got one from Plug and I love it. I wear it every day. Your purchase is backed by their unmatched 1-year warranty and 30-day money-back guarantee. One more very cool thing, Plug is dedicated to helping reduce e-waste around the globe. To date, Plug has helped save over 1 million devices from reaching landfills, and they're looking to double that number by 2025. Link to Plug Tech from the show notes, and check out all the great deals and savings on certified pre-owned devices. Plug Electronics. Check it out. What prompted the move to New York? Was it to go to NYU for philosophy, or was there any other particular reason you went to New York? I knew you played.
I think I was sold a bale of goods, as they say. I had seen this band Television play in '75, I guess, and thought, this is great. And I started to hear about a New York scene, and I thought, wow, well, if this is what it's like, that's where I want to be. When I got up there, Television was the only thing like Television. There were interesting things, Talking Heads were doing something interesting.
Right.
I don't know, ESG, DNA, Lilia Lunch. I mean, a lot of people were interesting, but nobody was speaking to me like Television did.
Yeah.
But then once I was up there, it all came out great anyway. I played with Alex Chilton. I met a lot of great people, Anton Fear. So I'm not complaining, but the reason I moved is that I thought that the scene was a little different than it was.
Right. Because you mentioned, playing bass. Well, you played bass with Alex Chilton, and then, and speaking of Television, you guys recorded with Richard Lloyd. Yeah, I mean, it seems like just such a great scene in those days. What was going on up there? Well,
I mean, sometimes, great poverty makes for good music. I don't know. It was a very tiny scene. It might seem like a big thing, through the wrong end of the telescope, but it seemed to me there were about 150 people involved in it, which is small if you consider how many people are in Manhattan.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
And it was all just centered around a few blocks, really. I mean, it expanded down into Soho and Tribeca with a club called the Mud Club. But in those first years, it was very compact, and it was a pedestrian scene, Nobody had cars. Everybody walked. So you'd actually run into each other.
Wow. Yeah, I had Richard on the show, too, a couple of years ago.
Oh, great.
He was very interesting. Yeah, I was a huge, huge fan. And then while in New York, you started a record label.
Kind of. I mean, now it's what you'd call an independent record label. At the time, that was not as much of a concept. But yeah, I had a label it was originally called Carnivorous, and then after working in a restaurant making meat patties, I went vegetarian and changed it to Car Records.
Oh, so that's short for, okay. I knew about the car, but I didn't put it two and two together that it had anything to do with carnivore. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, Carnivorous, I think there was a Lester Bangs influence. He was a character who wrote for Cream magazine out of Detroit. And oddly enough, I ended up, trying to write songs with him and auditioned for his band in New York later when he moved there. But he was a bit of I don't know, it made me think of John Belushi at times. He was he filled up a room and was kind of comical.
Yeah.
Great guy.
I got to ask, what was your opinion of Philip Seymour Hoffman's portrayal of him, which I thought was pretty good, actually, in Almost Famous.
I don't really even remember it. I think I watched that movie, but I'm not sure I was paying attention.
Yeah. Well, I like just about anything he did, but I thought he did a pretty good job with that.
Lester was a funny guy. I mean, he was humorous. He was a delight. It was great.
I'll bet.
But not a first tier musician.
Well, this part, now going into, you're up in New York. Richard talked a little bit about this, or I asked him about it, and I'm still not 100% clear, because an early incarnation or whatever of the dB's, wasn't there a recording released under the name dB's that involved, you and Richard Lloyd? And
Richard had written a song in his hospital bed. He had a guitar and a little cassette recorder, and I thought it was really cool, and he wanted me to put out a single of it. And I was honored, and we went in and he and I played all the instruments. He played drums on it, and he cut a vocal. And then Elektra, my friend Karen Berg at Elektra, said to me, you can't do this, Chris. Richard is signed to Elektra Records.
Oh,
and
right.
So I'd spent, an ungodly amount of money on this, meaning $350 or something, but that was a lot of money. And so I said, okay, well, Richard, I'm going to sing it. And I took his vocal off, cut his vocal off, and I sang it. And I actually replaced his drums with a guy named David Bowler, who was a good drummer, who played in the band called the Marbles. So then I had to, like I said, I'd already sunk a lot of my heritage, maybe $400 into it. And so I pressed it up, and that became my first solo record. No, it wasn't my first. It was under the name Chris Stamey and the dB's.
Chris Stamey and the dB's. Okay, that's right.
It was just a name I made up for that record. Nobody from the band was in it, but we needed a B-side, so we did do. Gene Holder and Will Rigby and I recorded a song called "If and When" that I actually think is pretty good as a B-side. So
Nice.
I hope it makes sense.
Yeah.
So the A-side was not actually the dB's, but it was credited to the dB's.
Right. Now I'm remembering that was kind of the story of that.
But Richard was great. I mean, all those guys are great. Yeah.
I'll never give my heart away again. I'll sit and watch the children play. Wait for a rainy day to match my world of gray. I'll never give my heart away. I'll let the doorbell ring and hide my face. I'll let the mail pile up outside.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Looking to buy a guitar, an amp, pedals? Find great deals on all of these as well as audio and recording gear at reverb.com. You can also sell your gear through Reverb. They have great articles about music gear and bands. And Reverb believes music makes the world a better place. That's why they created Reverb Gives, that provides youth music education programs all over the world with the instruments they need to make music. Link to Reverb through Frets with DJ Faye in the show notes for this episode.
Hi, this is Chris Stamey, and you're listening to Dave Faye on Frets.
Well, the first two dB's albums, Stands for Decibels, Repercussion, the band at that point was you, Peter Holsapple, Will Rigby, and Gene Holder. But then after that, you did move on to a solo career.
Actually, you could say I resumed one.
Well, I guess that makes more sense now that you've told me the
Yeah, I
background.
think of the dB's as kind of an
That's right,
interruption
okay.
in that whole
That's right.
thing.
That's right. That makes more sense. And then at some point along the way, I know, eventually you came back for the one dB's album, but Mavericks with you and Peter is such a great album. And
Thank you.
I love that album.
Thank you. We love it too.
And I'm a huge fan of the Byrds and especially Gene Clark. Gene Clark songs I just always thought were great. And I really love your cover of Here Without You. So yeah, that's a favorite album. Another band I've been a fan of for years is Yo La Tengo, and you did some work with them also, right?
Yeah, I produced 2 or 3 sides with them very early on. And then after that, other people took up the mantle, including my friend Gene Holder. Right. I still play with them off and on and enjoy them very much. And in fact, I'm playing in New York with Dave Schramm, who is another fellow traveler.
Nice. Well, I think we should talk about the new album, Anything Is Possible.
I'm not arguing.
Okay. Well, I think I know some of the personnel, but who's on it? How did it come to be? Who produced?
I've been mostly producing my own records for a while. It's just the way it ends up, the way the cookie crumbles, really. But on this one, I did have help. at the end, my friend Wes Lachaud got involved and really helped put it all together. And I was very grateful for that. And most of it, well, a lot of it, we recorded more songs than made it on the record. But the bulk of it was done after a couple of months of woodshedding in one day with a rhythm section that was Charles Cleaver on piano, Jason Foreman on acoustic bass, and Dan Davis on drums. There were other tracks which I added along the way. The title track, Anything Is Possible, has Mitch Easter on drums, and he plays electric bass on the first song on the record, which is I'd Be Lost Without You. And but I had this more downbeat, a little bit more of a crooner record going, and then wrote a few more tracks after playing some shows with the Lemon Twigs, and that were inspired by their kind of electric energy. And they very kindly added harmonies to this record. And I also corralled in some help from some of the Brian Wilson band, especially Probyn Gregory, who was a multi-instrumentalist. And, multi-instrumentalist can mean you play both acoustic and electric guitar. It's kind of collapsed, but, right. He plays banjo, mandolin, percussion, but also French horn and trombone and trumpet. And I don't even know what all he plays, but he was like the magic ingredient in the Pet Sounds tours, and he did great stuff for my record. But I mean, there are a lot of players on it. That's one thing about taking your time to make a record. People are passing through, or you're talking to them, and they do something maybe remotely.
Right. I know there was a lot of that back, however many years ago. That's been now the pandemic or the COVID years when people were sort of forced to work remotely, but a lot of good stuff. It had
been going on for a while.
Yeah. A lot of good stuff came out of that, though. A lot of good music. Well, the Underground Garage Cruise is happening early next year, or April maybe, and you and Peter are going to be part of that? Don't
rub it in. No, I mean, somehow we are doing this. I agree, it's one of those things that you say yes to when it seems so far in the future.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it's there. I think it'll be a blast. I'm kidding. I'm also doing shows with the Big Star Quintet for that trip. And Mike Mills was on it this year with the baseball project. Right. And he came back and said, "Hey guys, I know you're not going to believe me, but this is really fun. It was just totally a blast." And so we were swept away on the surf of Mike's enthusiasm.
Great. Well, you mentioned earlier about the frets being the name of the show. I absolutely welcome. I've had a couple bass players, and now I've had you as a bass player. Need to work on Mike Mills. I've seen the Baseball Project a few times and at house concerts and stuff, and such a great band.
Well, I mean, he's a good conversationalist. You should try, maybe contact the REM headquarters and ask him. He'll probably do it.
See if we can make that happen. Well, I did mention the Underground Garage Cruise for a couple of reasons. I'm a big fan of a lot of the shows on Underground Garage, but I might be, again, nothing certain with this either, but I was down in New Orleans as part of a 2-week thing that just wrapped up this week. But while I was down there for a few days, I visited my friend Joe Schwab, who owns, the Euclid Records here in St. Louis and the one in New Orleans. And I think he and I and Rick Wood are maybe thinking about going to this, the April Garage Cruise. So we'll see.
Cool.
See if we can make that happen.
Yeah,
I'd be very excited about it. The list of people that are playing sounds pretty impressive. She's provided guitar, drums, and vocals in many bands over the years. Das Yahoos, Pink Slip Daddy, The Friggs, Bubblegun, Palmyra Delran and the Doppelgang, and she currently hosts the wonderful Trash Pop Treasures on Little Steven's Underground Garage.
So I would hop the little local train to Philly and go to the record conventions, and that's where I first met Lenny Kaye. Yeah, I was like, oh my God, I was like a little kid, and I was like, oh my God, that's Lenny Kaye, So I walked over and I was like, hi, I'm a big fan of the Nuggets collection. And we sat and bullshitted for like 20 minutes. And then I went back the next year and I saw him again and he remembered me. And that was like a mind blower. You know what I mean? And now we work together.
My talk with Palmyra Del Ran is available on Frets. Well, what's next for Chris Stamey? Any other projects coming up?
Well, I've been involved in this kind of crazy super group, if you can hear that word without laughing, but it really kind of is. Well, see, you laughed. I would have too. I mean, I played with a band called the Golden Palominos years ago. That was a curated band, Anton Fear. And this is a similar project in that there's a guitarist named Stefan Schuck in Paris who is a guitarist. He'd work on frets, and he writes music that he then suggests to singers and lyricists that they complete, because his songs don't have lyrics or necessarily melodies to them. But his music is very interesting. So there's been a Salt Collective record that came out last year called Life that I produced, and I've done the new one, and it's really a good record. And when I tell you who's on it, it almost seems like a distraction from how genuinely good the record is. But it's Andy Partridge co-wrote some things with me. Matthew Cause from Not a Surf is on it again. Amy Mann.
Nice.
Jason Faulkner, who plays with Beck and was in Jellyfish, and it's great talent. Mitch Easter, Lynn Blakey. Well, Mike Mills is on this one. A guy named Django Haskins, who's a super talent. I mean, I don't know. It seems like there are about 40 different people who have chimed in on it. And I know I'm forgetting some of them, but it's quite a coherent record at the end of the day, because it has Stefan Schuck's hand in all the songwriting. There's actually an EP already out that's kind of like the, not outtakes, but other tracks that we had too many tracks to put on the record. So we put out a pre-release EP called the Salt Collective, and it includes a song from the archives that Stefan recorded with with Scott Miller from Game Theory. And that's a really cool track too. It's got one of the first songs in a long time from Mitch Easter on it, and he also has another track on the full album. It's coming out in October. So that's been a big project. And I continue to just do studio stuff. I'm really excited about this record that's not out yet, by a group called Bass Battery. Battery being, I think, the French word for drums. But anyway, it's a bassist who sings and a drummer who sings harmonies. And they're really great. And it's kind of, it's like, like you see a three-legged dog, and the first thing is you marvel at how well it walks. And then when the dog starts doing ballet, it's like incredible. I mean, that's kind of what I feel about Bass Battery, that they seem complete as just the two of them, and you don't even think about it. And there's some of it was recorded live in the studio with just the two of them, and so I'm really big on that one. I don't know, a woman named Ellie Kinney has a great song that I'm fixing to finish up, and it goes on.
You stay busy. That's good. Well, Chris Stamey, I really appreciate you taking the time today to talk, and really looking forward to the release of the new album and all the other projects you got coming up.
Thanks so much for this, Dave. It's been a blast. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, we're rolling. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'd be lost without you, tangled up in blue, tempest tossed without you, cast adrift askew.
Chris Stamey's new album, Anything Is Possible, releases this Friday, July 11th. More info and links are in the show notes to this episode. Don't forget you can subscribe to Frets for free at most podcast platforms and on YouTube. The channel has some fun extras like YouTube shorts and some videos. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.
Without you, I'd wonder at the reason why. As the colors all fade to a single hue, I'd be lost without you.
Sid Straws, at some point I'll have to. Hers was priceless.
Yeah, I think at one point Sid was up for being the host of one of the late night Conan O'Brien kind of shows, and I, the world would be a better place if she had gotten that.
I'd watch that. She's wonderful.